Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the sports betting show brought to you by a real statistics professor. This is college football week 1 of the 2025 season. Cousin Jared, week 0 happened. It was fun. Some close contests, some nail-biting endings all around. What were your thoughts on week 0?
I was just glad that football was back. The chaos that was the first quarter of the Kansas State Iowa State game. That kind of thing is always fun. And of course, I mentioned it before on last week's show, but Hawaii's never going to let you down. Week 0 out on the islands. And so, I think it was everything you could ask for a week 0 game, slate of games. But excited for like the full thing this week, starting Thursday, Friday, even all the way to Monday. Just some of the best 5 days of football here.
Yeah, we'll do a quick kind of a recap here. I guess we don't want to spend too much time on it because we have so much to talk about here. We're going to cover 24 games. We're going to cover 3 games on Thursday, 3 games on Friday, one of the games on Sunday, and of course the game on Monday, and all the good ones on Saturday. I will say we kind of nailed the Iowa State, Kansas State thing, thinking it would be a lower scoring, knockdown, drag out. Who knows what would happen? You mentioned it. We were talking on Discord. The whole game was drunk. It was sloppy drunk for a while. Partially the weather, partially early season, who knows, partially some just mistakes. Dylan Edwards getting hurt on the punt return throws things off there. And then it got drunk fun at the end.
Yeah.
And so it was a wild ending in all the different ways possible. And that one, we barely missed the total in Sam Houston State, Western Kentucky. That one was really close to the number, kind of is what it is. Kansas, I think we had the over in the first half. We had it kind of nailed right. And then the game just kind of died down. They didn't need to do anything else. The second half was nothing. That sort of thing happens. It stings more when there's only 4 games, right? But in reality, we know that's just kind of the way it is. We're going to make a lot of picks, a lot of bets. That's going to happen, good and bad for us. And then, of course, that last one. This is the one I wanted to talk about here. I have massive complaints with the Stanford coaching staff there. Not inspired at all. I don't know what your take was.
It's almost like they've only been there for 3 months.
It's like they've been there for 3 months, but you also supposedly have a coach there who's done this at the highest level and couldn't figure out that running prevent defense, what's the old line, right? Only prevents you from winning, right? I was talking about this on Discord. You only if you ever run in the prevent defense and that's acceptable, there are like 20 other defenses you could run that are acceptable, because really the idea is just don't do anything stupid. And they ran the prevent defense twice at the end and just let Hawaii with a one-leg quarterback go down and tie it up and then win it. The offensive play calling there when it was just terrible coaching. Yeah, part of it, they hadn't been there long enough. Part of it is, have you watched college football? I don't know. It was
right.
I'm sure we're not the only ones, with concerns there.
Well, and the answer is Frank Reich may not have watched college football. So, who's to say?
I don't know. We don't know. We don't know. We try to stay positive here, but sometimes, sometimes you got to call a spade, and that was pretty brutal. But again, short slate, we kind of knew from the beginning it was one of those, one thing goes this way, 2 things go that way, and all of a sudden it's going to swing things. We got a bunch here to talk about, and we'll get right to it. We're going to start off with the games of the week here. We actually have some incredible matchups. We're going to start off right off the bat with my Baylor Bears hosting Auburn, and what's going to amount to be a huge game, I think, for Baylor and their quest to, are we back? Is the coach, deserving of his job? I was very loudly opposed to that for a while. Then they kind of got the right coordinator situation and things kind of turned around last year. I'd love to be proven wrong here. And this is a great game to launch Baylor into a 10-win season and a wild Big 12. Unfortunately, with the wild Big 12, they might not make a bowl. I don't know what's going to happen this year. In the Big 12 or with Baylor. We don't really care about that in this game, or y'all do. I do. Y'all don't. What we care about here is the under 57. It's an A grade, according to the model that projects about 51 points. So enough room here to consider this an A. Model says on average Auburn might win by something like 27-24. I think that's a pretty reasonable score. Auburn doesn't seemingly want to play very fast. Cousin Jared, what stuck out to you as this being a good under?
I think one thing that we need to, at least I'm trying to do a better job of keeping in mind here, is that when you have quarterbacks that are transferring around because they did not win the job at their last stop, or in Jackson Arnold's case, had the job, lost the job, It's certainly possible that it could be, a different offense could highlight their strengths. It's also possible maybe the quarterback's not as good as we thought. I know there's one game in particular that we're gonna talk about later where I will kind of go into this more in depth. But Auburn has just kind of been in a rut offensively ever since our boy Hugh Freeze got there. So I think, you mentioned what lack of faith you have in Dave Aranda. Now maybe you do have faith in Dave Aranda. I think coming into a game
I
like
don't
this, he
know.
can have the
Should I?
defense. Yeah. I don't know, but I do think that he can have the defense ready to play in a game of this caliber with the whole offseason ready to go. You've got a track record of what Hugh Freeze likes to do. You kind of got plenty of tape on Jackson Arnold from Oklahoma last year. So I think Aranda can put together a game plan that can keep this game, maybe both teams score in the mid-20s. This feels like a 28-24 type game to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, I'm hoping that matters which side is the 28 personally. But
Yeah.
Dave Aranda, of course, more of a defensive-minded. The coach was a former defensive coordinator, and has at times been more or less in charge of the defense at Baylor, depending on which year you want to look at. Of note, that the last thing I just want to mention on this game is two things really from the model. Again, Auburn doesn't want to play very fast. At 78 pace, that's the more extreme of the pace there. So again, slower is fewer points. Hunter's average. Defense grades out as the best unit on the field, according to the sideline, better than either offense and better than Baylor's defense. And then, of course, you've got a defensive-minded coach for Baylor. So if Auburn's defense is their better thing and Baylor's, got a defensive-minded coach, then you would expect this to fall more on the south side of the average game, which is 55. And so the model is saying, absolutely, we should be on the south side of it. The market's saying on the north side of it. So we will take that and run with the under 57 as an A grade there Friday night. It's a big news Saturday, of course, the game everyone's been talking about
For months.
It's so shocking we get a game like this, Texas and Ohio State. I don't know what we can say that hasn't been said about these teams. We've got to play in the under 48. It's an A grade play. Model says 40. That feels a little bit low if it landed at 40, but you never know. Sometimes this feels, because Jared, more like a game that might be on track for 40, and then it's going to be like that Iowa State, Kansas State game. There's going to be a big play somewhere. Might be that one more later in the third quarter, something might be earlier, but there's going to be a big play or two that's going to get you some points. But in general, we're thinking this is going to be more of a slower game, and that we can still hang under that under 48. Couple keynotes here, 48. 48, 47, both key numbers, 49, not a key number. So we're getting a push on the highest key number, wins on all the other key numbers in the 40s, which the model says. Of course, both these teams have fantastic defenses, fantastic offenses, but both defenses grade out better than the offenses. Because I was a little surprised about this. Texas grades out very slow on the pace, really not trying to move the ball very quickly at all. On the road, if that's the style they play with, we got a good shot at the under here. What's your take?
So you mentioned both the defenses being really good. I mean, for my money, I think Texas is the best defense in the country. Ohio State is definitely in the top 5 there. I've written about it. I think Archer Manning is going to be fine this year with a challenge like Ohio State, though. Completely reasonable if he might get off to a little bit of a slow start here. I think same for Ohio State, going to be really tough for him to just come out on fire. I will say this will probably be an uncomfortable play. To your point, you could look really good for 45 minutes of this game, 50 minutes of this game. These two offenses just have too many talented playmakers that at some point you will get uncomfortable. Don't say I didn't warn you if this ends up being like the Iowa State, Kansas State game, if you had the under in that one, that it gets
and you were 1 foot away in that one of losing.
Yes.
Maybe less than a foot. I mean,
yeah. So I will acknowledge up front this will be an uncomfortable play, but I just think these two defenses are too good and the offense is just a tad too inexperienced. And the other thing I would say, a potential live bet situation here, because both these offenses will come out with some scripted plays. You could see 10 points on the first 2 drives, and then, things may settle in. The defenses exert their will. So I'm going under 48, but, if I see the opportunity to grab a live under during the game, that might be something I'm looking at as well.
I hate saying this because I think in general, I think it's a fairly terrible strategy because I just don't think it works. I could be wrong. Maybe it does. But this feels like one of those games where if they it starts slow, I bet the over, and if it starts fast, I bet the under. Just because we know there's going to be some scoring. There's too much talent on these offenses to keep them down the whole game. I mean, this game, if it finishes 10-6, would be a true shock, right? Or even if it's 14-13 would be a true shock, right? You know there's going to be some points, and so it's one of those. Yeah, like I said, if it starts fast, live bet the under, because those defenses will settle in and are good enough that it will. There won't be points everywhere, but if it starts, if we have a scoreless first quarter somehow, or we're real low scoring at the half, like the offenses are going to do something. And I don't think that holds true for every game, but there's so much talent in this one that it kind of seems like that might be the way to look at this one. Because you mentioned, of course, that Iowa State, Kansas State, I do have to mention it also that if you had that under, count your lucky stars for the rule change this year, because the rule change that cost Kansas State a timeout in that second half.
Yes.
That changed the total, because otherwise they have one more timeout. Iowa State has to try to score, and probably does score from the one at that point. And that even could have changed it. So even the new rule change with the injury, you can't fake an injury, cost you a timeout, can, maybe affected the first total of the season. And I thought that was crazy. Because last thoughts here, anything else to say on again, what's the biggest game of the week here?
The other thing I think that's going to make this a little bit of a tight, scary play is I don't think either team's going to get way out ahead. Like the issue with our play in the Kansas Fresno State game was, there was just no pressure on Kansas to score the entire second half. I think both teams are going to be incentivized to score in this one. So, like I said, hold on for dear life on that under 48. But also, to your point of, hey, if this is a scoreless first quarter, a live bet on the over might not be bad.
Yeah, and even to talk about the St. Houston State game, that game going over by 4 points, part of the problem was St. Houston scored too much too early and made Western Kentucky kind of have to, at the end, made it interesting in the second half. And so totals and sides aren't completely independent, right? There is definitely some correlation there. Doesn't mean you want to make your whole bet based off the correlation, but you just have to know that that's going to happen, and how the game plays out will then sometimes affect your total. So definitely a hang on spot there. LSU plus 150 as an A grade here in just what would be the best game of the week, one of the best games of the season on the non-conference slate here early on, just overshadowed by Texas and Ohio State. This one will be a night game in Death Valley, as opposed to a night game in Death Valley.
In Death Valley, which there will be next year. There will be a night game in Death Valley, but this year it's a night game in Death Valley.
There you go. This one's in the state of South Carolina. Two of the top quarterbacks in the country here, as opposed to you go from that Texas-Ohio State game where we're saying, hey, take the under, because both these quarterbacks, we know they're going to be fine. We know they're going to be good. But, maybe first game out the start against the two top defenses like that, a little bit tougher. Here you've got two veteran, established, top-notch quarterbacks here going up against two good defenses. But these quarterbacks might provide a little bit more fireworks, we think, than in that game. We don't have a play on the total, though. We're playing LSU at plus 150. Sideline's got this at pretty 50-50. Slight lean to LSU. Thinks they should be slight favorites instead of slight dogs. I don't really know how much better LSU might be than Clemson, if they're better than Clemson. Obviously, playing in Clemson's a tough thing. A night game there, this is going to be very tough. But plus 150, who the heck knows what's going to happen in this game is kind of more my thought is. Because, Jared, what's yours?
I wrote about this. Clemson's lost LSU's lost 5 straight season openers. They're 0-5 against the spread in this game. What I would say is I think the money line is the right play here. Don't take the points. I think obviously LSU has a good chance to win this game, but if they lose, I don't think they cover. So like you said, two really good teams. I think it's going to be a tight contest. I'll be interested to see how two things. I want to see how LSU's defense play. They brought in a lot of transfers after their defense kind of underperformed a little bit last year. And when it came down to it, LSU had, they need to run a 4-minute drill to run time off the clock. LSU had issues running the ball last year. So can they, do enough on the ground against this Clemson defense? But yeah, just in general, I think plus 150 is too steep odds for a team as good as LSU, even playing a good team like Clemson.
This is one where if you trust the model blindly, which you probably shouldn't do, right? We talk about, all models are wrong. Some models are useful, right? We use it as a tool. We trust it more or less in different situations, based off of what we observe and what we know about it. Is LSU, should they actually be favored like the model thinks, slight favorites? Again, model says they should be minus 108. That seems maybe like a little bit of a stretch. I think, Clemson at home, Nike. For me, I'd probably say the other way. I'd probably say Clemson should be minus 108. But that's kind of beside the point, right? Because we aren't trying to assess necessarily if we think Clemson wins 52% of the time or LSU wins 52% of the time, because that's not the proposition we have as sports bettors. We have the proposition of you have to lay a number like a minus 170 or minus 180 or lay points with Clemson. Whereas with LSU, getting plus 150 means as long as they win more than 40% of the time, this is a good play. Will they win this one game? We have no idea. We can't predict the future. But if they were to play this game 10 times, LSU wins 4 of them? Absolutely. And there's your break even number, right? Can they win 5 out of 10? Probably, right? I mean, it's somewhere in that ballpark, and that's what makes this a good play. And that's how we make money here. We make a lot of bets. We lose a lot of bets. But like we say, we win more when we win than we lose when we lose, because partially it's taking advantage of the prices when they're right. This is one of those where plus 150 makes sense. Again, one game, one team might win by 30, right? We don't know. And that's the whole point. We don't know by who. LSU might, right? I mean, we've seen weird things happen. There's going to be a game. I don't know if it's this one, but there's going to be a game where a small dog goes on the road and wins by 20 or 30. And everyone's like, wow, that was so surprising. Like, we don't know which one. That's why we got to consider the price of these things, because we're not making bets in isolation in one bet, right? We're making a lot of bets trying to figure out how to maximize the portfolio. So LSU plus 150 A grade there in a Saturday night game. In the Sunday night game, because interestingly enough, the model is down on both of these teams. I'm glad they're playing each other here to start off, because we would be fading Notre Dame and Miami if they were playing a big game against someone else. The model's really down on both of them. We talked about this last week. Is it right or not? With Notre Dame, it's kind of that we talked about, got a lot of guys to come in and replace. And so the model's just taking a wait and see approach. If they come out and dominate this game, Notre Dame's going to skyrocket up those ratings, because that's going to be just such a huge, strong data point. Miami, a lot about Carson Beck. We talked about him, a lot about the defense. Same thing. If they dominate, the model's going to love them. But right now, the model's skeptical of both. They play each other. And so we're kind of in lockstep with the market, because we're lower on both, which takes us to another total. We're going to go over 49 A grade. Model says 64. I don't know if this gets into the 60s, but this game has a really good chance of getting into the 50s. I don't see where 49 can even come from. Yes, Notre Dame is going to play slow. Yes, Notre Dame is better on defense than offense historically. But if you've seen Miami play, I don't know how you think that Miami lands in a game with 49 points against a team with a competent offense. It doesn't really make much sense to me. Because, Jared, is that how you're seeing it?
Yeah, I think my biggest thing here is, or one of the biggest factors for me here is, I think you go ahead and lock in the over 49. I just don't see any way this goes down to 48. We kind of talked about it in our last show, but Miami's offense specifically is getting a lot of respect for what they lost, in my opinion, with Cam Ward kind of expecting Carson Beck to come in there and play very similarly. I think that's a tall ask. So I just don't see this total going down. So I would say grab it now while it's over 49. Don't wait and think that it might go down to 48, because I don't think that's going to happen. I think that so
and
we
kind of know,
sure,
just to make sure we catch this right, make sure if it does start creeping up, make sure you grab it at least at 50 and a half, right? Don't.
Yep.
For sure, that's your key number. You got to get it in there at that point.
Yep. Definitely agree with that. So, I mean, I'm a little bit lower on the Miami offense than most, but clearly the market still thinks that they have some juice there. I am probably higher on Notre Dame's offense. I think they maybe have one of the, if not the best, one of the best running games in the country. And CJ Carr being the starting quarterback now, I think, yes, he's young, but he's been there for a year. And I think he gives you more options than, maybe Riley Leonard did. I think you're going to see less quarterback design runs, but I think you're going to be able to see a more vertical and intermediate passing game. Riley Leonard was a great college quarterback, but he definitely was limited in some of the throws he can make. I think with CJ Carr, you're going to be able to open that up a lot more. So I think the offense will look a little different for Notre Dame, but I think it'll still be good and efficient and enough to get this game into at least the low 50s.
My thought here is, Miami's getting a lot of respect in general. And if you think Miami's going to be good, then right now, I think you have to think it's because of the offense. I think you have to think it's that Carson Beck's going to refine his old form. And they just reloaded with skill guys, because they lost all their skill guys, but they just brought a whole bunch more in. They have a bunch of, 5 stars, 4 stars, whatever. And if you think that Miami's going to be good, this number just confuses me. And again, that doesn't mean this game can't land 20-17. One game, anything can happen, right? Anything can happen. So that's not to say, again, there's no locks in gambling, right? Which we try to say all the time as a reminder.
Yeah.
But to me, if your thought is Miami's going to be good, it's got to be because their offense, you know that they're going to play fast. And that makes this total not being at least in the if this was in the mid 50s, I probably would think over, but I have a harder time going over, knowing Notre Dame's defense, and Notre Dame might, really try to slow this down and think, oh, well, I know the model's saying a lot of points, but I know Notre Dame really is going to try to grind this game down to a halt. But, if the only way I think that really happens as an expected value and a long-term thing, not in a one-off, is if you really have faith in Miami's defense. If Miami's defense is actually going to get good, then this total being in the upper 40s, low 50s, I think it makes sense. And if you don't buy into Carson Beck, well, the model doesn't really buy into Carson Beck. It doesn't really buy into the defense. It still says 64. So I'm like, I just don't see how you. It's almost like one of those, if this, then this, if this, then this. How did we get to this, all these ifs? There's none that get me to this number.
Right.
Again, not to say that it can't happen. It's just, it doesn't really seem right. It feels like mid 50s is where this should be put at, and then they should dare you to go over, and we'd be looking at it going, are we bold enough to go over? I don't know. Can it get into the upper 50s, right? And that'd be a fun discussion, but a very different discussion than we have to have at over 49. It just seems like let's just do it and say, look, in the long run, this is going to work out. Who knows in one game, but more likely to be more points than not, because Miami's involved, and that's really all that matters. Those are the games of the week. Next, we turn to a new segment called Double A games. Guys, Jared, I was joking around this last night. Double A level of minor league baseball, a type of battery, and also games that the model has opinions on, because these are the games, there are 4 of them this week, that the model has an A grade on the total and the side. And we like to talk about these because people see double A grades and go, which one's the better play? And so that's what we'll try to assess here. We're going to start off right off the bat. Thursday, I love this, folks. Thursday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, a super early kick. Boise State at South Florida. We have double A grades on this one. The better one that we like, Boise State -6. Cousin Jared, why do you like Boise State -6?
So I would say, people on Discord tag everybody's friend Jake on this and ask him about South Florida. He has strong feelings. He talked about him in our preseason show. I think the head coach there was the OC at Tennessee for a while, so he knows him fairly well. I'll be honest with you, the total here just gives me a little bit of anxiety. Early season game, big travel spot for Boise. They're going to the weather. Yeah, I've humidity. I've said this before about Boise State. I specifically remember it. They went and played in Tallahassee against Florida State and actually won that game. I said all of these exact same things there, but I think picking them to win or cover the game is a little different than expecting the game to go over 65. That's just a tall ask in my opinion. So I would have leaned towards laying the points with Boise State anyway. But then when you factor in that, okay, well, clearly sideline sees something with both of these offenses or maybe both of these defenses here, that just gives me a higher level of comfortability laying the 6 points. Because if it's going to be that high scoring, odds are the points probably aren't gonna matter very much. So for me, I feel more confident about Boise State. That I know they're a pretty solid team, and that over 64, needing a game to get to 65. I mean, even with what we saw in Western Kentucky and Sam Houston State this past weekend, that game didn't get to 65. I mean, it's tough to get there. So I just did that game get to 65? Was it 41-24? Maybe it did get exactly to 65.
I think it got exactly to 65, which is why it's one of the key. It's the key number in the mid 60s, right?
Yes, exactly. But still, that game, like you said, a lot of scoring early. It had to play out a very specific way for it to get to 65, and I just don't know if I had that same feeling here. So let's lay the points with Boise.
A couple of things there. I love what you said. We talked about this a little bit earlier, right? Totals and sides can have some correlation here, often do. Unfortunately, you don't necessarily know what that's going to be ahead of time. If you did, that would change what we're doing. But rather, what you're saying, I think, is if Boise State runs away, it might play out more like the Kansas game, and we might not get to the total. If there are a lot of points, it doesn't really matter how many you lay, because odds are someone's just going to win by 7 or 10 or something like that. And so it makes that a better value. And so if the model's right about both, the smarter play still is laying a 6 with Boise State. Of note, Cousin Jared, the total is coming down a little bit when we send out these picks here. We're recording this Monday morning. We sent this out very late Sunday night. It was 64. Now I'm seeing more of 63. So my follow-up question for you before we get to the next game here, Cousin Jared, what number would it have to get down to in order for you to like the over as much as Boise State -6? Obviously, our key numbers are 61, 62, really probably
Yeah,
62, probably
yeah.
your
I
key
mean,
number.
I think for me to like it more than Boise State, it would have to get to a number it's not going to get to, like
Mm,
57.5
okay.
or something like that. So, maybe I would dabble some on it if it got to 61.5. But
You want
I
the
would
one around
still
62,
like,
of course.
yeah, I would still like laying the points with Boise State more at that point. I wouldn't like it the total more unless it got down into the high 50s, which I just don't think is going to happen.
All right, a noon game on Saturday, Ball State at Purdue, one that definitely would qualify also for a later segment that we have that we're bringing back again. You don't got to watch them to make the monies, and this is one of those folks. Other things will be happening. Don't watch this, but the model thinks there's some good betting opportunities on it. We're going to play the over 50.5. A grade model says 55.5, so model thinks more like an average college football game. This one could be a little bit of a runaway late, and that sometimes leads to fewer points, as we saw in the Kansas game. I still like the over in this one a little bit because of the fact that Purdue, new offense, new quarterback, going to be wanting to get some guys some experience, some playing time. I'm not really sure Purdue takes their foot off the gas here. Purdue, eyeing 6 wins, hoping for a bowl game. Can they make it? TBD, right? I haven't really looked too far in depth in their schedule, but they know they can't lose this one. And there's a lot of guys vying for playing time early on. I mean, this isn't quite like Kansas. Kansas, I think, was a situation more so where you're probably going to a bowl game. You're locked and loaded. You got your star quarterback back. Here with a brand new coach, this feels a little bit more like we're going to keep playing to the end. Maybe Ball State hangs around because Purdue's not that good, and that creates more of that Sam Houston, Western Kentucky type game
Right.
we can get over. Or if not, I'm just not sure that this game really slows down given the circumstances here. Cousin Jared, over 50.5. Of course, your key numbers in the low 50s, 51, 52 are both pretty equally key, and we get the wins on both of those. That's a bonus factor, in my opinion. What do you have to say about it?
Yeah, pretty short and sweet on this one. For me, this is process of elimination. I am a big fan of Barry Odom. I love what he did at UNLV. Looking at that UNLV score last weekend, maybe he was doing more there than you thought he was doing.
Not us, but so we said the whole time we were very high on him, and we were surprised that he was there last year. We were surprised that some big conference school didn't swipe him up last year because of what he did the year before. We were high on UNLV the whole time. So yeah, we've been on that bandwagon, and you see that game list last week, and you go, yeah, I think we were right.
Yeah. So I think you're going to see a big step forward for Purdue this season. The problem is in the Big Ten that may not result in very many more wins, but I think they're going to be a lot more competitive this year. Against a team like Ball State, though, that could still be, a 20-point win or something like that. And to your point, asking to go over 50.5, we're just asking for an average game. So sure, sign me up for that every day of the week. But yeah, big Barry Odom fans here. Not gonna take the points at Ball State. Not gonna be baited into that one.
Yeah, they're daring us to take the points with Ball State. I'm not either. Mainly because Ball State being ranked 131 according to the model, the MAC's really bad, and every year the MAC tends to also have a team or two that turns out to be even worse than we thought they'd be. A lot of them start off, they really struggle in these non-conference games. Some of these games get to be blowouts. Ball State might hang around, absolutely, and if so, I love that for the over. But they might get blown out of the water, and if they do, Purdue might get get what 80% of this total themselves, 90% of it themselves.
Right.
And so I hope Ball State can hang in there. I'm not as sold, but the over I think just has a much better chance of hitting, and so we like that over there. Because you're to the night games here, your Texas A&M Aggies against UTSA. UTSA ranked number 68 according to Sideline. Still thinks they'll be solid. With Owen McCown there at quarterback. Another East Texas native.
Went to the same high school. High school as me. This branch of the family actually went to the same high school.
There you go. So there's a little tidbit for you there if you want to deep dive into Cousin Jared's roots. We're going to lay the 23 with Texas A&M. Model says 27. A grade played barely because when you get to be favored by 27, the model's thinking realistically 21, 24, 27, 28 are your options. At minus 23, we get the win on 3 of those. And so just enough to get to that A grade value. Cousin Jared, you know, UTSA is going to play fast. The real question is your team going to play fast enough, going to want to score enough points to cover a number like this? You think yes. Why?
UTSA was 0-6 on the road last season and 1-5 against the spread on the road last season. It was not their strong suit, and I just don't see any way this plays out well for UTSA. And, you know, I am usually one that's brutally honest about my team. And this is maybe the best running game that A&M has had in the time that I've kind of been associated with the school since I started going there. I think that they're just going to be able to run roughshod over UTSA. And when I say roughshod, I mean literally just run the ball down their throat over and over again. And I know you said that UTSA plays pretty fast, but I don't think it behooves UTSA to try to speed this game up. I think their defense could get gassed if they try to do that. So I think they need to slow it down. And so that's why I'm kind of against the over there. This feels like, you know, if you would have told me this total was 55, I would have said that I feel like that's a perfectly fine total for this game. But I just don't see any way that A&M doesn't pull away late in this game. You know, A&M's backup running backs are still going to be able to get plenty of yards against UTSA. And this has nothing to do with UTSA's fortunes for the rest of the season. Could be perfectly fine. I just think that A&M is a tough matchup for them specifically to start the season with.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. I was going to say the same thing. Like, this is that's why I mentioned UTSA 68th in the country according to Sideline. That very solid team, a very respectable team. But when you go on the road to what we're thinking here, some of these Big Ten, some of these SEC schools that are really good, I mean, you might get the doors blown off. We see that a lot in week one. We see beware of the dogs in week one, right? Some of the dogs will cover and make you look really smart. There will be some upsets, but there's going to be a lot of teams really overmatched and that not having played game. Here's why this matters, I think. We're going to deep dive into it. If you've just been playing spring ball and practices against your own team, you're only getting to play against that level of competition. So that first game can be a real rude awakening for a school like UTSA who doesn't have to go up against the running game, like you said, that A&M has, or the defense that A&M has. The only subpar unit in this game, according to Sideline, is UTSA's defense. And like you said, that's going to be probably a problem for them.
Yeah.
And like you said, if UTSA tries to speed it up, this is going to have a real hard time not hitting, because UTSA is going to only have to score off of trick plays, big plays. They might get a couple of those, maybe one good drive that's scripted, that sort of thing, but or one coming out of the half. But I mean, they're not going to be able to put up enough points to hang in there unless this is a grinded out, low scoring type thing. Really, really, whatever. And so I'm like you, if this thing ends up at all high scoring, A&M's going to win this game by 35, maybe 40. A 42-3 score wouldn't shock me in something like this, because it's just a tale of two teams here. Marcel Reed quarterbacking A&M. How do you feel about that? Because I know the quarterback situation at A&M's been a little bit up and down, a little promising, a little bit of injuries, a little bit of everything lately for A&M.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to have the running threat at quarterback as well, but I just think that he was a better fit for Colin Klein's system than Wegman was. Wegman transferred to Houston and going to be the starting quarterback at Houston this season, but I just think he gives more options and the ability to run the ball at the quarterback a little bit more, which a Colin Klein offense is always going to like to have the threat of doing that at least.
Yep. All right. Put you on the spot there. We didn't plan on talking about that one. Another game that falls into multiple segments here. This is one of the after dark games. It's also one of the games of the week, in my opinion. One of the top games here. Utah and UCLA. Maybe a little bit of a undercard type game of the week, right? One of those sneaky good games. Because you and I are both very high on Utah. UCLA brings in Nico Iamaleava from Tennessee, who he did Aliva. I don't know. I'm sure terrible jokes about that. To UCLA and that quarterback swap, which was, again, one of the weirdest things I think I've ever seen with college sports. We're going to play under 50.5 as an A grade. We're on the wrong side of the two key numbers here in the low 50s, and 51 and 50.5 and 50. So if you can somehow find those, right, or if it gets there, why not? This also is a walk, don't run, in my opinion, because of that. I'm not, dying to lock in 50.5 because we can lock in 49.5 and it's the same thing really for us. Even 48.5 because 49 is not overly likely, again, as much as our brains want to say, yes, 7 times 7, but unfortunately, there are threes that happen as well in college football.
Not how it works.
Sometimes twos even. We almost had a 2 in that Stanford Hawaii game, except the quarterback fumbled the ball. But we're gonna go under because we're both a little bit high on Utah's offense as a possibility with Devin Dampier. I'm wondering, first game at this level, he played at UNM. The competition wasn't very stiff. I love the guy. I've been praising him for over a year now. First game against a stronger defense. Utah's defense is always strong, and the model doesn't really see either one of these teams pushing the pace at this point. Both of them playing slow. I think both of these teams would love extra plays. I think they would love to get out there in a game against a weaker opponent, really get that offense going, really try some things out, mix and match. This isn't the game for that. These teams both want to win this game. This feels more like a rock fight than if it was midseason or if they were playing, the Tech versions, the Valley State versions, the whatever versions of these states, that exist. If they were playing those schools, I wouldn't touch the under because I'd be really afraid that both coaches are going to say, we want to get as many plays in as possible. But in this game, if we limit the number of plays, it might be tough to get that many points. The model thinks closer to 40 than 50. What you got to say about it?
I feel like I've been doing this a lot, but so you mentioned a couple of the other segments this could fall into. I completely agree. It could be a walk, don't run, no reason to rush at the 50.5. As far as the side goes, and I think why I like the total better than the side is I don't think that, I'm sure it could be, but Utah's number 22, I feel like that's on the low end when I see how Sideline is like evaluating Dampier and some of the other parts of Utah's team. I feel like this is kind of the floor for Utah. I feel like, Sideline's a little bit lower on them. On the flip side, I feel like Sideline is high on UCLA, like maybe near the top range of the outcomes there. And so I see that there's an A grade on the side getting 6.5 with UCLA, but I'm a little bit skeptical of that. I don't think that's quite right. So that's why I like the total more. If you were to play the side in this game, I would probably encourage you just to take UCLA money line. And right now I'm seeing like plus 185 out there. So, you can put a small amount on there, get a good return if this game is what Sideline thinks it is, which is kind of a toss-up game. So
if it is that rock fight, low scoring, whatever, you want that plus 195 because then you never know. And then you go, we'll go to overtime, and then they'll be like, and then they'll score a touchdown on the first possession, kick the extra point, and then they'll fail on fourth down, and then they'll be like, so how did we? How did we do that? You're like, how did we lose by 7 in overtime? And it's like, this is the weird stuff that happens sometimes.
Yep, exactly. And so like the total more. If you're going to play the side, I think I would lean towards UCLA. Money line at 6.5. If it got to 7 or 7.5, maybe a different story.
7.5 would be very different story.
Very nice.
And for sure. 7 maybe. I'm with you. That one's a tough one. I don't think it gets there. I'm kind of in between the market and the model on this one. The model has this much closer to a coin toss, whereas the market is closer to Utah by 7. I kind of think on the road, Utah's the better team, but I kind of think it should be Utah minus, 3.5 is where I'd put it. And so I'm kind of smack in the middle there. So I think there might be a little bit of value with UCLA, not nearly as much as the model thinks, but the under I think has a lot of value here. And like we said, if this is a rock fight and it is more around 40 in the 40s, then maybe some value in the dog, but at that point, again, it could easily also be just a game that finishes, 23-14 or something like that too, wouldn't shock me as well. So we like the under there better than anything else. And again, that hits a lot of segments. Those are a bunch of games you're mostly going to want to watch. There are more games you're going to want to watch coming up, but now we turn to the segment of the games that you aren't going to want to watch. Some good value opportunities. But folks, there are other things to be doing with your life, other games to be watching, times we talk about sometimes spending time with some friends or some family, or maybe just some self-care, turning on the old video game console or whatever else you like to do. Friday night, Wake Forest minus 17, a B grade for us. We got a couple B grades here that we like. This is one of them. Cousin Jared, other things to do on a Friday night, of course, it involve a lot of things. People like to get together with friends and family. There are 2 other good football games on a Friday night. We've already covered one. We're going to cover the other one. This is one that starts an hour earlier. So maybe watch the first hour And then let's hope Wake Forest is already covering by the time we decide it's 8 p.m. and it's time to switch over to the other two games of note. But what do you have to say here about Wake Forest -17 home against Kennesaw State?
Yes, I think I took the Wake Forest over win total for the preseason. So I'm high on Dickert, the head coach that Wake Forest got coming over from Washington State. For me, this specific play is more about Kennesaw State is bad. I had Kennesaw State as the 135th best team, sure, in college football.
That's second worst. For those who don't want to do the math.
The second worst team.
Sideline or think about how many teams there are this year.
Yeah, Sideline has them as the third worst team. I just want to be able to fade teams that are that bad, especially against competition like Wake Forest. I don't think this isn't the strongest case to be made in this situation. I think there's some others that more squarely fall into this category. One that we're not going to talk about on the show specifically, but Wake Forest is not going to have an opportunity to make themselves look really, really good very many times this year. You want to take that opportunity when you have it. And so all that combination of things, mostly Kennesaw State's terrible. I'm going to lay the 17.
Yeah, they're really bad. They fell apart last year. They might figure some things out as the season goes along, but week one, I'm not going to put the faith in them to do that on the road.
And I'm glad you brought that up. Like one of the top 5 worst situations last year, coach fired before the season ended. Lots of players left when the coach was fired. There was clearly some animosity.
I was going to say, a lot of times the coach gets fired in that situation and everyone's like, yeah, because we're bad and we're all going to fight for playing time and we're going to show that we belong here or we're going to belong wherever we transfer.
Yeah.
Rare case where the coach being fired and like half the team was like, fine, I'm leaving too. Like, I don't want to be here. And it's like, usually that doesn't happen. Usually the players are upset when the coach gets fired, because the players are upset about how their season's going and that they're looking for a change. They're already upset. That's not the thing that made them upset. And that was a weird, Kennesaw State, very bad. 66th grade offense that's 2 standard deviations below average. And I'm not sure how many points they score because we've danced around it all episode. So I'll just say it. We love dogs. Week 1, we don't love dogs. Week 1, it's take some short money lines, lay some points. And you're going to see that as a trend here, as a theme. That's generally our idea here, is that week 1, like we talked about earlier, they get ugly. And so I'm not saying we want to lay it with every big favorite, but there is a trend here of recent times that favorites do a little bit better in week 1. These bigger favorites do a little bit better in week 1. And I don't really see why that changes.
Right.
Similarly, offenses tend to struggle early on. Unders tend to hit a little bit more than often. I remember last year it was a little bit more under skewed by maybe about a point or 2 per game. Maybe, I think the last couple of years from the projections early on before things leveled in. Well, who's got the weaker offense in here? By far, it's Kennesaw State. I'm just not sure their offense is going to do anything. That's going to make it hard to call.
Right.
17.
Right.
Saturday, a similar situation. Indiana's favored by 23 home. That's an A-grade play. Because you're in Indiana, losing a lot, bringing in Fernando Mendoza, who can only hope to be as good as our boy Rourke was. A guy we followed.
Pour one out for not getting to back Curtis Rourke anymore.
I mean, it was some good times. He made us so much money at different schools. It was great. But, Indiana, a coach that knows ball, to say the least.
Yeah.
And so we have the utmost faith in him and what he's rebuilding. We talked about them last week, a little bit maybe in the season-long bets episode. I can't remember. Maybe not quite the dream season last year, but still a fairly soft schedule starting off with a team like Old Dominion should be a rout. And Cousin Jared, I don't know if you have the stats to back this up, but they cruised last year in these type of games. It wasn't typically close. When the model said they were going to crush someone, they tended to crush them by even more than the model expected. The model says they win this by an average of 34. Because, Jared, this number 23 feels like people think Fernando Mendoza is going to be absolutely terrible. They think that Old Dominion is going to be good. They think Indiana is going to take a step back. I'm not sure, when you saw what happened last year with Indiana in these games, why you would not think that this number should be at least something like 28. I think it's a gift that it's on the south side of 24. So I'm running to take this one. What's your take?
Yep, I agree with that. One of the not most surprising, but more surprising things to me is how high Sideline is on Sideline. Not that I expected them to, drop down into the 30s or 40s, but I definitely did not expect them to be number 12. I think I had them closer to like number 18 or 19 or 20, maybe 21, something like that my own rankings. So pleasantly surprised to see that. Really like what Kurt Cignetti has going on there. I think with Fernando Mendoza coming in from Cal, and I think we talked about this at some point. I don't think it was on the show, but we didn't know how Mendoza had a above average season last year at Cal. And I don't think we knew, like, is that because he's good or what the situation is? But I think the way Sideline sees that is that Mendoza was good and he was actually being held back by being at Cal and just some of the challenges that Cal has in general. I think that Sideline saying Indiana is going to see a very short drop off in offensive play this season. And to your point, a short drop off against a team like Old Dominion is still going to result in a really good outcome for Indiana fans in this game. The other thing with Old Dominion, they haven't made a bowl the past 3 seasons. I know they got a new coach a few years ago. He hasn't really been able to do what they wanted to. They haven't gone to a bowl game since 2021. This is just not a very good team. To your point, week 1, not the time to be taking points with dogs.
Right. And I think we covered that last week on show, but that was also probably past the hour mark. So I'm not really sure how many people were even still awake by then. We probably put them to sleep.
Yeah.
By that portion of the show. I also just be remiss if I didn't point out there that just because I thought it was funny that you said how high Sideline is on Sideline. And I think you meant Sideline is on Indiana.
Yeah.
Just in case, for the one person who caught that, I thought that was, but you're right. And number 12 is definitely a lot of faith in Cignetti. Which I think is well earned. It is interesting to me. The teams, the model looks at situations like that, and it's got coaching stuff in there. It's got historical data. It's got a lot in there, but it looks at a situation like that and it says, yeah, I think they'll be fine reloading. Whereas other teams like Notre Dame, it's a little bit more like, I want to see a little bit first. And so who's to say it's not to say one's right or wrong, right? All models are wrong. Some are useful. It's just to say, it's just a slightly different perspective, something else to consider. Maybe we shouldn't get too caught up in this. Maybe we should consider this a little bit more. Maybe we shouldn't, but something to think about. And so again, the model fairly high in Indiana. And even if again, the model is a little bit too high on what we saw last year in these situations. So you have to think Indiana is going to take advantage of that and win big, something they aren't able to do against the better teams. That slight drop off might cost them in some of their tougher games, but it shouldn't here. Another one you don't want to watch because it's just 2 terrible teams. Cousin Jared, it would not be a Picture the Professor episode if we did not cover one of the worst games of the week. Maybe not the worst, but number 110 Temple versus number 126 UMass. Folks, UMass I don't think is as bad maybe as some other ranking systems out there have. I think the reason why the other ranking systems have them lower is because they are very bad and they play very fast. And that's going to make them look worse against teams that are better, because we often talk about this. If you're not very good and you're playing fast, you're going to get beat by more because there's more possessions, right? It's a very common sense concept. Some coaches seem to struggle to get that, but whatever. I'm not sure that's going to matter here, because I think they're at least in the same stratosphere as Temple and they're home. But what that pace is going to do is going to lead to more points. We're going to go over 49. What are the rare overs we have this week? Yes, we talked about points maybe being at a premium. Offense is struggling in week 1. I absolutely do still think that, but also these defenses are very bad. And with pace, the model's taking this game and getting the 60s, I think at least the mid 50s. I'm really surprised this number is this low. It almost looks like people are not considering UMass and their pace. Even if they slow it down and don't go quite as fast as I think with ugly football, we could see some busted plays. We're going to see some turnovers. There's just a lot of ways this game gets into the 50s. Ugly game. You're not going to want to watch it, but over 49 makes a lot of sense. Cousin Jared, what's your tidbit for us in this one?
So technically, we don't know who's starting at quarterback for Temple. Don't think it matters. Both guys will be trying to put up as many points as possible so they can establish themselves as the starter. To your point, UMass is going to want to play quickly. I think the reason this total is so low is people are looking at Casey Keeler coming from Sam Houston and saying that Temple will play a similar style to what Sam Houston did last season. The problem is Sam Houston was, I don't feel wrong in saying demonstrably better than what Temple currently is. Sam Houston would be able to quash any tempo that Massachusetts tried to play with. I do not think the roster at Temple is going to be good enough to do that. UMass will, if they want to make this a more fast-paced game, they will actually be able to do that. So I think this is all about pace, and I think that you're people are giving Keeler a little bit too much credit because he just doesn't have the players that he's had at Sam Houston.
I think it's a great point. And that's kind of where, again, we talked about early on, the edges are bigger, the how wrong we are is bigger, and how wrong the market is bigger on all these. It doesn't mean the market won't nail a couple of games. It doesn't mean the model won't nail a couple of games. This game could land in the 60s like the model thinks. That would be maybe a little bit high. I'm thinking probably more in the 50s. But I think that's kind of where the model might be missing a little bit. It might be a little bit slow to recognize that with Temple and adjust their pace. It hasn't adjusted their pace down enough yet, but it doesn't have their pace through the roof. And like you said, the defenses matter here. And that's kind of where, even if Temple's pace is slower than the model anticipates, then the model would still project upper 50s or around 60. Even if he does what he was able to do at Sam Houston, the model would still probably say this total still should be in the mid to low 50s because that defense, like you said, he's not going to be able to get the stops that he needed. The other underrated point about those Sam Houston teams is that early on when they were grinding out those games and just massive under machines and just breaking the model there, they had an offense that could move the ball slowly and kind of efficiently, not efficiently enough to score and be good, but just enough to drive, get 3 first downs in like 9 plays.
And they were avoiding 3 and outs.
They avoided 3 and outs for the most part. They played great defense. They got the ball back quickly. Even when they did 3 and outs, it was 3 and outs from midfield mostly. And so they were able to play that field position. I just don't think Temple's there yet. And maybe he will, I think he will get them there. He's a coach I have faith in. But week 1 here against a team like UMass who has a bad defense, I think Temple's going to start scoring too fast because UMass is going to give up points. And then UMass is going to get some, too many possessions. I think both these teams score enough to get some 50s over 49 is the A grade play. One more here. You don't got to watch them to make the money. Because, Jared, this is a Sunday afternoon game. We're watching a lot of college football. This is going to be a good game. Okay, so this is not to say you shouldn't watch this because it will be a good game. It's to say we're asking you to watch a lot of college football. If you want to take some time for something else Sunday afternoon, don't feel guilty. You don't have. It's just a life reminder. Just because it's a good game doesn't mean you have to watch college football Thursday night and Friday night and all day Saturday and then 2 games Sunday and then Monday, right? We got to at some point pace ourselves a little bit. This is about life and how to live life better, right? And one of those things is don't have to watch everything, but hey, should be a good game. Virginia Tech at South Carolina. South Carolina is a little bit of a favorite here. They're the better team at home. Or excuse me, better team at designated home team. This is one of the games in Atlanta, I guess. Is that in Atlanta? So better team, so that's why they're a good favorite. But neutral site. Again, we talked about offenses coming out a little slow. 2 teams that we think are going to want to slow it down. 2 teams that are as good defensively as they are offensively. Really pretty mirror image balance, according to the model. And so slightly slower pace, balanced teams, we think under 49.5. Model says 45. Key thing here, only a 4.5 point difference between the projection and the market, but 47, 48 key numbers. We get winners on both of those. And the model thinks that 44, which is also a key number, is very likely 45 and not key number in college football. We get the win on that one. So too many ways to win this here if we can stay in the 40s. Cousin Jared, what's your take?
I think maybe you have a little more faith that this game is going to be a good one. I don't know if it's going to be a good game. I think Virginia Tech's going to really struggle to score, and we know both of these teams more defensive-minded than they are offensive-minded anyway. And so to your point, getting all those key numbers in the 40s, it's a play that I think you can feel mathematically and statistically you can feel good about. So give me that. If this was a touchdown, I would say, hey, we need to be laying 7 points with South Carolina as well. But 8 is just kind of like, that's kind of gross.
Yeah, minus 8 gets a B grade. The model says 13. I do think that if it gets to 7, that probably would be A grade territory. So if it gets there, if you could find one, again, at reasonable odds on if you can find one, you can lay 7 at any price if you felt like it. But we shouldn't do that, right? We're talking about
no.
minus 110, minus 115, whatever. For laying 7 might be worth it. Cousin Jared, and I just wanted to kind of touch on something you said. They're more defensive-minded teams and coaches, and I agree with that. And that's what surprises me a little bit about this number, because the model says that efficiency-wise, the Virginia Tech defense is only slightly better than their offense, and the same for South Carolina. 1 point better, not 1 point on the field, 1 point on the scaling we use, which is average 100, standard deviation of 15. So 1 point there is almost nothing. And the model saying the perception is these are defensive teams, But the model says efficiency-wise, they're actually pretty balanced. They just play a little bit slower. And so I'm a little bit surprised because you're right, that perception, I kind of tend to agree with that a little bit more. And the model is even saying not so fast and yet still says under. A lot of times you look at the model, it says not so fast and it makes the contrarian play. But when it says not so fast, but we're still going to go the way you think it should go, okay, I think we're getting some good numbers here, and that's why the model likes it. Really, it's 47, 48. The model would not like it this much at 47 and a half because you'd be splitting those two key numbers. At 48, I still think it's a go personally. So a little bit of wiggle room there, but go ahead and one we could call in this next segment here, run, don't walk. Go ahead and get this in case it does start dropping. I would not want this to get below 48 and a half. I'd still play it at 48, but I really want to at least get it at 48 and a half. And that will lead us to run, don't walk. 4 games here where maybe a little bit less heavy in the analysis, more about, hey, this number's right. Let's just go get it now because all the value's about to be gone and we're all about value here. We're going to start off with the Thursday. Buffalo at Minnesota, definitely one you don't really want to be watching. Minnesota could run away with this one at home, but we're going to go under 44. B grade play, but 44, your key number in the middle 40s. We'd love to have 45, but we really want to make sure we get the push on 44 because 44 is more common than 45. And of course, with the model projecting 41, we think those key numbers of 41, 42 are much more in play. What is your take on this under?
Same song, different year for Minnesota. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, I don't know how many different cliches I can come up with here. It's what Minnesota does. Actually, you and I had we talked about briefly, like, we were talking about Michigan and we said, what's Michigan going to be like? Because under Harbaugh, there was like a very specific thing in non-conference games. You could almost write the script of the game before the game happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Harbaugh's not the head coach there anymore. How's that gonna look? Last year was kind of weird. They didn't have a good quarterback. Quarterback situation was unsettled last year. So anyway, long story. We don't quite know what to expect with. Yeah. Nothing's really changed in Minnesota. Going to be the same. Just Minnesota's going to do Minnesota things.
Different quarterback, a bunch of different players in there, but same coach, same philosophy. All the guys that, didn't play last year were all backups and saw it, other than a guy or two here and there. And that's what they do. They play very slow. They run the ball a lot, and they will have 1 10-minute drive, and they will have one quarter where there's only like 3 possessions. And this game will likely be ground to a halt under 44. A run, don't walk, just because we don't want this on the other side of 44 as a B grade play Thursday night. The other Friday game we talked about being a really, really interesting one here. Colorado is hosting as Georgia Tech, plus 155 as an A grade. The model thinks Colorado should be favored. One of the stronger home field advantages, because we talked earlier about the humidity going to South Florida and how Boise State was able to amazingly, impressively go down to Tallahassee a few years ago and get that win. That might have said more about that Florida State team than anything else. But we talk about these elements can matter and how you prep for it. Georgia Tech having to go to the altitude, something you can't really prep for very well when you're starting off in Atlanta, right? You can't make the air thinner.
Right.
So there's really just only so much you can do there. I don't really know what happens in this game. Georgia Tech is the better team, but I'm not sure they should be favored. The model thinks they shouldn't be. I might be a little bit more into the toss-up category, but hey, whether it's a toss-up or not, plus 155, way too good to pass up. Because, Jared, I think for me, this is a run, don't walk, because I think as the week goes along, I could be wrong here, but my hunch is that people are going to start getting on the Colorado hype train. There's a Deion Sanders effect there. Obviously, he lost Shador, but the quarterback that they brought in, Salter, is a very good quarterback, very veteran, experienced quarterback, knows how to take care of business, and they've got the 5-star, freshman who might be playing with at some point. We don't really know how that'll play out. They've got options there at quarterback. They've got a lot of skill. Deion knows talent, right? You could say a lot of things. We try to stay, my takes on him are very medium, right? I'm not a hot take on one side or the other. Right. Bottom line is the guy knows football, and he does have some flaws, and he does have some deficiencies. The coach, every coach does. He's are just magnified, but you can't argue with the talent. And in week 1, talent's going to matter. The altitude's going to matter. Does Colorado win this game? I don't know, but plus 155, way too good to pass up. What do you got?
I agree with everything you said. And this is a little bit unique compared to what I've said for most of the other games and some of the other stuff we've talked about today. I might even look at splitting my bet here, taking as of right now 4 points with Colorado and taking some on the money line here. To your point, I think there's going to be a Dion effect here. I think money's going to start coming in on Colorado, as the week goes on. The two other things I think about, both of these teams have given their fans myocardio infarctions, or whatever the right word is. They both like to play in tight, close games. And the other thing, and I just can't get this game out of my mind, the Georgia Tech Florida State game last season that started in Ireland, where that game had 8 possessions. Georgia Tech just slowed it down, which is not specifically what they're known for, right? Like, their pace is above average, but in that game they really slowed things down. And to your point, going big home field advantage for Colorado, the altitude and everything, I would not be surprised to see Georgia Tech try to slow this game down a little bit. And so I think those two factors, just make me think that maybe we should be dabbling on taking the points here in addition to the money line. If I had to pick one, I would choose the money line, but a dabble with the 4 points or so. I think you could make worse decisions.
We won't do that as an official thing ever in here. It's just too tough to track, and we are big on keeping records and tracking how we do and everything. And so no official splitting, but we talk about these things in these situations. And so we always encourage you to kind of, do what makes sense for you with regards to how you play. We always want you to be comfortable with your picks. This is one where we think splitting might make some sense. Last thing I want to point out here, Colorado started off pace through the sky in Dion's first game. That game against TCU, remember, was just pants on fire pace. Yep. And as the season wound down, I think he kind of realized maybe that isn't the type of play I should be doing here. And really, by the end of the year last year and into this year, now their pace grades up below average from college football, where I think he's realized, hey, the pressure I'm putting on the defenses by playing faster, if I have a 3 and out, just puts pressure on my defense. And on top of that, you talk about the depth that's needed to run, the depth at altitude. And so he's had a slightly different from that first game. Georgia Tech, on the other hand, having an above average pace, but as you said, might want to slow the game down. So the pace on this one's fascinating to me. We don't have a play on the total. The model doesn't have an A grade on the total. But I am interested in seeing how the pace plays out and who's trying to do what, because I don't really think I know what'll happen in here with regards to the tempo. I don't know what'll happen with regards to the game. We never do. But even with regards to the average game here could be anything happens, which means plus 155, too good to pass up. Another one, we're saying, hey, run, don't walk, Toledo at Kentucky. We're going to take the under 48, which is a B grade play. 48, we talked about already multiple times on the show. 47, 48, your key numbers in the upper 40s. That's why we're running, not walking, because we don't want to get stuck with 47 and a half or 47. This is really as low as we want to go to get the value. Cousin Jared, tell us more.
So again, same song, different verse with Kentucky here. We know exactly what we're going to get. And in some of these games, you're putting a lot of some of these early season games where we've played Kentucky unders. You've been putting a lot of onus on Kentucky to do all of the heavy lifting here. Well, Toledo's not a pushover either. I can promise you that Toledo will get a couple of stops against this Kentucky team. I know we forgot to mention Jacob Zeno, the backup quarterback for Texas A&M.
We did. Yes.
When we were talking about the Baylor game, so he's in his 15th year of college.
Former
football.
Baylor quarterbacks everywhere. Yeah. Jacob Zeno in his approximately 15th year at A&M. And then this one, former Toledo great, DeQuan Finn from Baylor.
Yeah.
And is now off, I think, in Ohio, if that's correct?
It's not Ohio, but
it's one of those schools.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Miami, Ohio. Yeah. Sorry.
Miami, Ohio. There you go. And then one of your former quarterbacks, Zach Cal.
Yes. Friends, I'm not high on Zach Calzada. Is what I will say is the other reason that I like the under here. But I'll leave y'all with this. I mean, for those who have watched the show for a while, y'all know that I've kind of been on and off with Kentucky. I've done a pretty good job of gauging where Kentucky's going to be each season. What I would tell you is that in the 2 seasons that Liam Cohen was the offensive coordinator at Kentucky, which were not consecutive seasons, by the way. He was the OC in 2021 and then 2023. They had 17
I remember we talked
wins.
about how weird that was.
Yeah. They had 17 wins in the 2 seasons where he was the OC, and only 11 wins in the 2 seasons without him as the OC. And Liam Cohen now the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So he's not going to be roaming the sideline.
Never heard of him.
Kentucky
Is that
football.
an FCS school or a Division II or?
Oh yeah,
the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Like that. Yeah. Something like that. But
we're not
anyway,
mid-season form yet, folks. You could tell.
Yeah. We're getting there. We're building up our game shape. We're getting into game shape here.
I was thinking about game shape earlier. We talked about Cal already, and you've already missed a chance to drop your favorite Cal nugget that I feel like we've even got a season bet on how many times you're going to drop that nugget. You got another chance later in the show.
Yeah, it's a long season. It's a long season. Yeah.
All right. Under 48 there for Toledo and Kentucky B grade. One more run, don't walk, Alabama, minus 13.5, folks. I don't know what else to say other than I'm not high on Florida State. I don't think they're going to be good this year. Are they going to make a bowl game? Very possibly and probably, given they're in a mediocre conference. But this, folks, is going to be a rough start to the season. Alabama's going to be really good. And I don't see why public money isn't going to come in on Alabama and jump this up to 14. I wouldn't be surprised if this lands more in a 15.5 no man's land by the time he gets a kick. I'd still lay it there, honestly, but hey, let's take the extra value at 13.5 and lock it in. We talk about it every year. We reference whatever it was, Arizona State, Mississippi State game from a few years ago where we started off week 1 and it was like we laid 8.5 and the model said it should be 17.5. And I was like, heck, lay 11.5. Who cares? And they ended up winning by like 20 or whatever. And there's always games like that where I just think this one is people are not realizing Florida State is going to struggle again. And it's not going to be, they're not Clemson. They're not even SMU. And Alabama just has so many weapons all over the ball.
Yeah.
I don't know why this is south of 14, but I'm going to take it and love it. Cousin Jared, what's your take?
I'm the same. I'm the same way. I have a lot of faith in Gus Malzahn, and I do think that Florida State's going to be better this season. Alabama's not the team that's going to show up against. I also think it's funny saying this, but I feel like Alabama has something to prove this season with a couple of inexplicable losses last season. Somehow Kalen DeBoer, I'm sure, is already feeling the heat, which we knew was going to happen with whoever ended up replacing Saban. But
we talked Sarkisian at Texas was the same way. We knew if it didn't happen fast, he'd feel the heat. That's Texas. It's Alabama, right? These jobs like that.
Yes.
Sarkisian got it off pretty fast. But same thing with DeBoer. Like, we know if it's not this year, he's going to have the heat way faster than he would anywhere else in the country.
Yep. And so I think Alabama has a bigger fire under them even than what they normally would for a game to open the season.
Yeah, and I would be remiss if I didn't point out, you're right. I do think Florida State will be improved, like you said. The bar's really low. They went 2-10 last season, 1-7 in conference. So I think they will be better than that, but I still think they will struggle this year. Sideline's got them 8. And so it is a situation where they can be absolutely better than they were last year. They're still not going to be that great, especially early on in the season. And like you said, Alabama, just not the team to do it against, like you said, a coach that has a lot to prove already somehow. That was run, don't walk. We've got some walk, don't runs, games we like, we want to talk about. We are making this an official pick because we're not doing another show later in the week on college football games. And so we won't have another chance to talk about them. But hey, just keep these in the back of your mind. Play them at some point. Watch the number. For instance, Nebraska, Cincinnati, under 54, A-grade play. We love the under. We don't really care. We talk about that, the honor, the Mississippi State, Arizona State game, or all these that we talk about like that. We still think this goes under. But if you can get a 55, why not? Because 55 is the most common outcome in college football games. Really, we're not worried about this one. Cousin Jared, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to say until you get to 52.5. At that point, go ahead and lock it in. Don't wait around any longer. But 52.5, 53, 54, probably all the same. Because the model projects this one way lower than this. Questions if it's going to get to 40. These two teams are going to play slow. Nebraska's got a really good defense. They've got a better defense and offense. It loves Dylan Raiola. One of the 4.5 points for the quarterback position, according to Sutton. That's pretty solid. Loves him and still doesn't think there's going to be enough tempo, enough offense for this game to have a bunch of points. Also of note, being played at Arrowhead Stadium. Is that going to keep it a little bit lower scoring? Potentially. NFL cut field, is that going to change anything? I don't know. I'm not a field manicurist, but we saw what happened to the field over in Ireland where you couldn't even see the paint, right? Being a soccer field, right? So is that going to change anything? I'm not really sure. All I could say here is that whether or not the field matters, whether or not the location matters, I've seen a few Matt Rule games, and your numbers need to be low or you need to be playing the unders. This number isn't low, so we're playing the under. It's really that simple. Because Jared, what's your take?
I put this in the article I wrote about your college football betting reminders in the preseason. The under went 16-8-1 in games involving these two teams last season. That's just about it. 48, 45, whatever. Doesn't matter.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, of all the games that Sideline is very extreme about, this one might be the one that lands closest to the model number rather than the market number. And what I mean by that is, if you like alt unders, this might be a good one to look at, because I'm not sure. Like, if you played an alt under 48.5, you'd get some decent plus odds. And I'm not sure this game gets into the 50s. I don't think it gets into the 50s. If you played an alt under 45.5, 44.5, even if you went to a 42.5, you'd be getting some massive plus odds. And now you're not maybe not 50-50 to win that one, but you're going to get some real good value. Last thing on this one, Cousin Jared, we talk a lot about Matt Rule first half unders, first game of the season. If I remember correctly, some of these early games from Matt Rule, someone out there will look it up, and hopefully I won't be proven an idiot. But I think some of these early season games for Matt Rule have been first halves that have been 3-0 type games. I'm assuming you're also loving a first half under as well.
Yeah. I mean, the people here know what to expect is what I would say. I mean, I feel like the first Nebraska first half under, golly, I'm seeing 26.5 at like minus 103 right now. You could get some good numbers on that. So yeah, a Nebraska first half under is at the very least always implied. Maybe not when they're playing, some really small school where they're going to flex their muscles offensively in the first half, but against any competent team, yeah, love a good Nebraska first half under.
If this first half total was 20.5, I would say under. Still love the under. I've seen too many Matt Rule games.
Yep.
I don't get it. Maybe it's high scoring. I don't know. But all I could say is, if this game is as low scoring as I think it will, Thursday night, you'll see one tweet from me and one tweet only. And it's they were who we thought they were, because that feels like we think they are this. Let's prove it. Hopefully. But yep. We think we know who they are. And really not much to talk about with Cincinnati. I mean, just kind of ho-hum, average on offense, average on defense, slow-paced team. I don't see where points are coming from. But we do believe in some overs. We've got a couple of them here. Missouri State at USC. Hello, Missouri State. Welcome to FBS. You in Delaware. You play very fast, and I like that. That makes for fun football. We think over 60, because if you're playing fast against Lincoln Riley, we think there's going to be a lot of tired defense out there for you, Missouri State. A lot of big plays from USC. This game should have a lot of points. We may get Kansas in this one. It may end up, dying in the fourth quarter a little bit. So maybe a first half over might be a little smarter. I'm not sure, but the tempo and talent, at least on USC's side, is there to go over. Because Jared, is USC's defense going to be any better? They have to be legit good, with knowing Missouri State's pace, for this game to go under. And I'm just not sure they can be legit good. What's your take?
Right. I think I'm more of a believer in, I'm going to go with, let me get the name here in front of me so I don't butcher it. Jaden Mayava, who we liked at UNLV, was surprised when he transferred out to USC. I think surprised with the injury to Miller Moss, surprised how long it took them to actually play him at USC last season.
We were very high on him.
Definitely showed.
We've been high on everything that comes out of UNLV.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just high on USC's offense, even kind of, I think you're going to need to get very little out of Missouri State in this one. But what I would say is, we said, walk on this game because, 60, who really cares? I was thinking more from the perspective of just get it before it goes over 62. I'm seeing 59.5s out there now in some places. And so if this got down to 59, even better. So we said wait, because we thought it wouldn't matter if it got to 61.5, but who knows? Maybe this will actually get to 59, and we would love an over at 59.
The thing we have to be careful on about money moving markets early in the season, you have to be careful all the time about information that's inside information, or what people kind of realize before everybody else does. And then you got to figure out, is the steam real, all that. So it's its own thing that we don't specialize in here. We specialize in math, modeling, value, things like that. We don't specialize in reading the market. The thing you do have to be careful about week one, about the number moving, is, does someone know, or do multiple people just know not like inside sketchy stuff. Just have they been hearing what's coming out, what's being said, watching the practice reports a little bit and seeing, hey, we think this tempo is going to be different than we initially thought, that sort of thing. That would be the only thing on this one, is if, we hear that USC is going to try to play a defensive first style this year. No, we hear that Missouri State's not going to play pants on fire like they did last year at the FCS level. If that's the case, then maybe, this total shouldn't be quite so high. But because, Jared, the model projects South Carolina to score an average of 59 points in this game. That means there's a 50-50 chance USC gets this number by themselves. They might need to get it all themselves. I'm not sure how much Missouri State's going to score, but there's a chance they just get this all by themselves. So something else to keep an eye on there. Two more games here in the walk, don't run. Another over for us. Rice at Louisiana, over 40 A grade. We're walking on this one because, as we talked about here, the key numbers in the upper 40s are 47, 48. If it gets down to 47, great. We're not expecting this to be a barn burner. The model actually has it with fewer than the average number of points in a college football game at 52.5. But we're still going over because we think the market's a little bit overreacting here. Cousin Jared, what do you know? Do you know anything about these two teams? I feel like I'm a little bit unsure on both of them, other than I think Louisiana is going to be a lot better than Rice.
Yeah. So first thing, Rice, new coach, offensive guy. I think Rice's offense will be competent enough to, help the game get over a total like this. The other thing, I talked about this a little bit earlier, is, the quarterbacks who transferred because they were playing and then, lost the job or whatever the case may be. Walker Howard is now the starting quarterback for Louisiana. And this is, I don't want to say that I struggle with it, but I'm willing to give Walker Howard a bit of a pass because he went to LSU and, of course, lost out to Jaden Daniels and Garrett Nussmeier. Okay, it's like not really anything that you can.
I guess those guys are okay.
Yeah. Both of those guys ended up being decent. And then he went to Ole Miss and lost out to Jackson Dart. And so it's like, okay,
Also
well,
good.
I that's not bad. Now, maybe you could say, then why did he transfer out of, Ole Miss after this season and go to Louisiana? Does that mean that he knew he wasn't going to start this coming season at Ole Miss? I don't really know. With NIL, I think that gets kind of sketchy nowadays. It's possible that Louisiana just kind of backed up the Brinks truck for him to go there. But so I put Walker Howard in a different category because he hasn't really had a chance to prove anything yet. And the games that the playing time that he's lost out to, you cannot, fault him, in my opinion, for the players that he's lost out to. So I have faith in what Walker Howard's going to do with the Louisiana offense this season. To your point, 48.5. Let's just, let's gamble that it will go down to 48 and grab it there.
Yeah, and if it does go up, again, as a reminder, 50.5 is the number where we just go ahead and say, even if it gets to 50, it's going the wrong direction, maybe just lock it in there just so you don't miss it. But 50.5, no big deal there. Of note, Walker Howard gets half a point as a starting quarterback. There are a lot of negatives in this list as well. So basically the model kind of seeing it as you saw it, where we just don't have a lot of data on him, kind of like he might be okay. It might be solid for this level. We don't have a lot of data. So definitely some upward mobility there for him if he does show that he is good enough to have been backups to those guys and only a few steps behind them. And if that's the case, then there's, again, the 52.5 models projecting might even need to be higher. Also of note, Rice's offense only grades out of the 76, which is fairly low. And another thing where if they're a little bit more competent, new coach, we talked about this on the season bets episode coming from Davidson, where they won all of 3 games in the or 7 games in 3 years before he got there or something like that, and turned them around. And so a lot of upside potential here for more points even than the model thinks, which already thinks this over 48.5 is a solid play. One more here, Monday night, TCU against North Carolina. What hasn't been said here, Josh Hoover, one of the stronger quarterbacks in college football. North Carolina with a new coach. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of him. Goes by the name of Billy Belichick, I believe. I love TCU in this one. I'm not buying into the Belichick hype. I'm not buying into the hype early on that it's going to be good. It might be good later. I don't know. So I'm not expecting a smooth start to it. I'm expecting what happened with Stanford, where you haven't been watching college football. What's going on here? The new system, the new whatever. I just expect some quirks like that. Again, by the end of the year, who knows? But I think early on, this is a really tough opening game for North Carolina. Sideline has this TCU minus 8.5. I put A grade up there. Only a B grade for this one. It would be an A grade at 3. And that is where we're walking, not running, because if it gets to 3, even better. If it gets to 4, lock in at 4 because we don't want it to get to 4.5. I'm wondering if by the time you get to this, might be a wait until the very end. If it holds 3.5, if you're still seeing 3.5s for a long time, wait to the very end. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point Sunday, Monday, money starts coming in with the Bill Belichick hype, and we can squeeze out like a -3, -120 or something. Which I think
everybody's going to want money on this game because it's the only game on Monday. So I definitely agree with that point. The only, not the only, I have no idea what to expect from North Carolina. Really, the only thing I trust is TCU's offense. I know that Bill Belichick is, the defensive guru. I think you're probably going to see that manifest itself more the later in the season we go. I think we're just going to have a welcome to college football moment here. I think you're going to see moments where North Carolina looks really competent in the first part of the season and times where they're going to look very much overmatched. Maybe they'll like that consistency.
Stanford had a couple drives where they were just running the ball down their throat, 5 yards a pop, and it looked great. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. Look at this. And then they had times where it was like, what?
Yep, exactly. And so I trust TCU's offense.
Very well
I would
coached.
definitely stick to laying the points in this game as opposed to money line. I think you're just taking additional risk there if you were to play TCU on the money line. That at the end of it, I think if TCU wins this game, it's because their offense plays really well, and I think laying a number like 3.5, hopefully 3, won't be a problem.
Folks, if you can learn one thing from us here, laying odds with college athletes is usually not the smartest investment. Sometimes it makes sense in the NFL, in MLB, in hockey. College athletes, it's tough because your break-even points, you're counting on things to happen 60, 65, whatever percentage of the time, and there's just too much variance with these kids, and too much can happen. Of note, though, folks, this is already, I'm seeing right now, a -3, -115 in the markets. There are going to be times you're going to watch this show where, because when you watch, even if you watch it right when we record, we're going to post something and you're going to say that number's not out there. We're going to say it was when we sent it out to our people on Patreon. We can't make it happen instantaneously. They're recording to all these different things. But sometimes it's going to work the flip of that, and that's this one. We're not changing it. The official play is -3.5, and that is a B grade, but there's -3s out there now that are A grade. So this is one where it's going to go both ways. This is one where get that -3, it flips to run, don't walk. Lock in that -3, even at -115. But if you don't have the -3 yet, or if it goes away quickly, again, I do think there will be North Carolina hype money coming in. And so waiting later to take it isn't crazy. We're almost done here with the show. 4 more games. Return Cousin Jared of one of our segments from the very start, one of your favorite segment. Used to kind of be a Mountain West Pac-12 corner. Now I guess it's Mountain West. I don't know. I don't even know what conference these schools are anymore. We've got,
well, yeah, just Mountain West this year, but next year it'll be back to Mountain West and Pac-12 because half the Mountain West is going to the Pac-12.
But then Northern Illinois is in the Mountain West. I'm so confused. That's for another time. Georgia State, Fresno State, the first of the late kicks, 9:30 p.m. Eastern. We're going to go Georgia Southern, even money and A-grade play. I watched enough of Fresno State that I know they have a game under their belt, and I know they're home. But Georgia Southern is no slouch. They're not as good as Kansas. They won't beat them as badly, probably. But, man, Fresno State looked lost. It looked like Kansas could have won that game by 50 or 60 if they felt like it. Even money, sure. Let's take Georgia Southern because I don't think that game under your belt is going to make much of a difference when it happened like that.
Yeah. And earlier when I was talking about, hey, maybe we need to look at, what the quarterbacks have done at some of their stops and why they've transferred and everything. EJ Warner, I'm sure he's a great guy, but he hasn't stuck at Temple and he hasn't stuck at Rice. If you haven't stuck at Temple and you haven't stuck at Rice, I'm worried about what that says about Fresno State's offense this season. So yeah, give me Georgia Southern.
I agree. If you're at a place like Temple and you destroy it, you should go to a place better than Rice.
Yes.
If you're at a place like Rice and you destroy it, you should go to a place better than Fresno State.
Yeah.
And I'm like you. I'm not. He's not bad, but he's not making the jumps that you see from guys who make those jumps to those levels and they dominate, right? And you kind of saw that last week, like, and of course, I think I heard something about his dad made the comment that he's better at this level than he was, and I was thinking, wasn't Kurt Warner driving a beer truck at this point? Wasn't that the story that he was?
Yeah, he was at one of the directional Illinois, and then was stocking shelves somewhere fairly soon after that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like The difference is that you made Kurt Warner, no offense, but and I know you love your kid, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but you made millions of dollars, and thus your son got the training and the opportunities to be better than you at this age. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to be as good as you were, which is what I think we're seeing here. Which, again, no slight on him. Like you said, I'm sure he's a great guy. He's a much better quarterback than you and I ever could dream of being. But again, we're comparing to the top of the top, and I don't think it's good enough. So we're going to take Georgia Southern here, even money. Model thinks they win this about 60% of the time. Another team that played last week, Hawaii, already kind of covered them in the top. They're going to travel to an Arizona team that fits squarely in the middle of the Big 12 mess, and the bottom half of the teams who could potentially win the conference, and the top half of the teams that could potentially miss a bowl game. I think that describes 5 or 6 teams. Arizona, I think, is one of them. Don't know what to expect from them. Really, we don't have to care because we're going to play the total under 50 A grade. Model thinks low 50s. Bottom line here, we get the win on 51, 52, 55. So there's some value on this under. Micah Alejandro, the big question, how hurt is he? How dynamic? We saw him be fully healthy. He looked okay with the I think it was a sprain at the end with that mobility at times running around, but then he also made some very terrible throws because he was kind of playing on one leg. That's kind of the big question for this game. If he's not 100%, this number's going to fall through 55 quickly, I have to imagine. He's really the only hope for Hawaii to hang in this game. He's really the only hope for this game to sniff the 60s, in my opinion. Because, Jared, what's your take?
Yep, I agree with that. I would also say this is just what Hawaii does. You think that maybe some season they will find a way to be a little more competitive on the road, but this just hasn't been the case for many years now. Play fine at home, and then the offense can go to sleep on the road. And that's the case, not even factoring in injuries. So, add injuries on top of that. I see it being a tough go for the Hawaii offense against Arizona because Arizona is, to your point, wide range of outcomes for Arizona this year, but I think we can all agree Arizona's better than Stanford. It took everything that Hawaii had to get to 23 against Stanford. I think they'll be doing good to get to 17 against Arizona.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the model, of course, knows that Hawaii struggles more on the road. It throws it in there. That's why I think it's fairly close on the spread. Even then, it projects 18 for the number of points. Even that seems high. Like you said, 17 would be a good outcome. I think if they get into the 20s, I'd be surprised. Arizona, not a team that's going to push the tempo. We don't believe, even though they do have a strong quarterback in Noah Fafita. I believe they lost everything at wide receiver, and that's going to bring their offense down a little bit as well, which could make it harder to score points. So we get early season there. Hawaii's defense having a game under them might help. Unfortunately, their offense having a game under them might hurt because their quarterback might be injured. And that's, of course, something to keep an eye on as the week progresses. Cal at Oregon State. We're going to go B grade over 50.5 because, Jared, this one probably still projects on the slightly lower than average side. I like this one and just think, hey, let's play it at over 50.5 because we get the wins on 51, 52. And that matters. That's going to matter, 5 to 10% of the time. And that's sometimes the margins we're playing at. And so to me, this is a straight value play more than an analysis of the X and O's. It's about the number. It should just be a tick higher. And it should be a tick higher right around two really key numbers.
Right. I'm fine with this play. I would say 50.5 is the last place I'm playing this at. I don't even want to play it at 51. California lost a lot on offense. We talked about Fernando Mendoza going to Indiana, Jaden Ott now at Oklahoma. So Cal just really lost a lot on offense. They got Devin Brown, who is an Ohio State transfer, so you think there's definitely potential there. Then on the Oregon State side, I'll be honest with y'all, I may talk about this more later in the season, but I don't know what to make of Malik Murphy. He looked good in his time at Texas. His numbers were fine last year at Duke, but then Duke, basically let him go. And they brought in Mensah from Tulane, so I think a lot of people think it's an upgrade, but it's like, if you have a good quarterback, you generally just don't let him walk out the door like that. So it's kind of like, what does Duke know that we don't know? So I just don't really know what to make of Malik Murphy. But yeah, it seems like an average game, 50.5. Sure, let's do it.
I think my hope, and I don't know, maybe someone here knows there's an article been written about this. I'm not sure if so. We can't unfortunately cover and see everything as much as we like to. My hope for Oregon State, my hope for this over is that Malik Murphy grades out well, just wasn't the right fit for that system. And it just didn't click. And so he went to a different place. But you make a good point in that maybe more, we don't know. And so again, one of those reasons, like we talked about too, this isn't we think this number is terribly mispriced, A grade. There's some value here at 50.5, still plenty of 50.5s out there. If it's 51, I might still play it at 51 because there's fewer late games, and I like to have some money out there at the end of the night as I'm trying not to fall asleep when I should be falling asleep, but I would not be playing it at 51.5. And because of Jared, you said you wouldn't even play it at 51, and I respect that as well. Last one here for taking us home, Colorado State at Washington. We've got this going under 52.5, another B grade. Basically the flip of what we just talked about. We get the wins on 51, 52. Model says 49, so it's not like it's massively mispriced. It's just, hey, you're happy to get the right side of some key numbers. This one's still out there as well, widely available. So just go ahead, kind of a run, don't walk. Not a run, we need all our money on it, but just if you're going to make a bet on it, here's the time to do it. Here's the play to make, in our opinion. A game that might get ugly, and if it's so, that could help us because it might be a situation where Washington isn't dying to keep their foot on the pedal. They play with about a standard deviation below average pace. And so the hope is they aren't playing fast. They get out early. They put the game to bed, and they basically rocket sleep, kind of like Kansas did. That's our hope here. Because Jared, what's your take on the latest kick of the Saturday night for the After Dark? Again, we've got 3 others on Sunday, Monday, but this one and the Utah UCLA game are 11 p.m. are late ones for the people staying up late, under 52.5. What you got?
I don't have much faith in Colorado State's offense. I know that's not breaking news there, but they only played 2 power conference opponents last year. They scored 0 and 9. So I think Washington's defense is definitely capable of keeping them down to 10 to 14 points, something like that. And I do expect Washington to make strides on offense this season, but I don't think they're going to be perfect right out the gate. So I like the under 52.5. Similar thing though, I might play this one at under 52, but really love the 52.5. So if we wanted to turn this into a run don't walk situation, I'm good with that as well.
Coach came over from Arizona, of course, the Jetfish, and his first year at Washington ran a very different program than he ran at Arizona with regards to the offensive scheme, the pace, the scoring. It wasn't exactly what we expected. Sometimes when that happens, you wonder how much of it was the players, how much of it was, a star wide receiver and a really good quarterback that he had at Arizona. So you never really know at the start of the season because coaches will change what they're going to do with regards to their tempo, their style based off of who they have. But I feel like Arizona was much more offensive first, faster pace under him. Who cares about defense? And that's not what we saw at Washington. Of course, how much of that is also being in the Big Ten and needing to do something a little bit different. So there's a lot of variables at play there. But something I had to fight a little bit of watching Washington last year was I know this was the Arizona coach, but they're not playing like Arizona 2023. They're a little bit of a different version. Of note here, I think Demond Williams Jr. For Washington somehow played in 13 games for Washington, despite only starting 2 of them. I feel like that's very rare, very, very hard to do. So a guy who played in every game, but somehow only started 2. So we have some data on him. Interesting situation. Of course, the model is very high on him. But like you said, it's likely to be a game that Colorado State struggles to score, and one if Washington doesn't push the pace, we think can hang in the 40s and maybe the low 50s to hang on for a late night sweaty winner. Cousin Jared, that is it. We covered everything. About an hour and a half here. That'll be hopefully our time limit for the most part. We needed a time limit because otherwise we would just talk for days on this stuff. Parting words from you before we head out.
I mean, one of the best weekends of the year, college football for 5 days straight. Can't ask for anything better. The only thing we're missing is a little bit of action. We got to wait till the second half of the year for that, but definitely love that college football is back in full swing.
Watching Farmageddon in Ireland felt like Maction that first half. It was so drunk, sloppy, crazy. True. I was like, this is Maction. This is the terrible. This is what we're going to get when Miami of Ohio plays, Akron or something, where it's like slow and terrible football. But you're right, folks. If you have a significant other, go ahead and spend some time with them early in this week. If you have someone who appreciates flowers, buy them flowers. That way they have something pretty to look at since they won't be seeing much of your face this weekend. Yeah, that's my advice for people because it's going to be a lot of great college football. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, do all those things. You can join. We even talk about it. You can join us over on Patreon. Support us. No one's even here by now. That link's in the show description. $19.99 a month. You get a bunch of good stuff. We love you over there. If you're with us, we always appreciate your support. We have a lot of fun over on Discord, a lot of extra benefits, like Cousin Jared's articles. So we're terrible salespeople here, whatever. But again, if you're here with us, hit the like button. That helps us a lot. And so drop a comment for the algorithm. Tell us where we're going to be wrong. Please don't make fun of us too bad for last week. It was only 3 games.
Small sample.
So small samples. So we'll turn it around here, hopefully starting this week. And again, we remind you as we sign off here that with the right mindset and the right model, while you're going to lose a lot of bets, you can win more when you win than you lose when you lose.